The bitter wind howled across the frozen wasteland that had once been northern Canada. 6 alien researchers, wrapped in their thermal protection suits, trudged through the deep snow. Their advanced scanners had detected something unusual beneath the ice, something that didn't match the natural formations of this abandoned world. Marcus, the team leader, held up his hand, signaling the others to stop. His crystalline sensor array pulsed with a soft blue light as it analyzed the ground beneath their feet. "The readings are strongest here," he said, his translator converting his natural clicking speech into standard galactic common. "Whatever these humans left behind, it's big." The rest of the team gathered around him. Thorne, their technology specialist, snorted in derision. Probably another one of their primitive bunkers. The last 3 sites were nothing but ruins filled with rotting metal and basic computer systems. "Still, we must document everything," Reed said. She was the youngest of the group, and the others often found her enthusiasm for human artifacts annoying. "Even primitive civilizations can teach us something." Professor Ash, who specialized in ancient languages, adjusted his atmospheric filter. "Let's just get this over with. This planet's weather is as unpleasant as its former inhabitants' technology." The team activated their excavation drones, sleek, floating spheres that emitted precise energy beams to melt away the ice. As they worked, the entrance to a massive facility slowly emerged from its frozen tomb. The structure was made of thick concrete and steel, materials that made the alien researchers exchange knowing looks. Only primitives would build with such basic substances when crystalline composites were clearly superior. "Look at these door mechanisms," Thorne said, running his scanner over the massive entrance. "Mechanical locks and hydraulic systems. They didn't even use gravity manipulation or phase shifting. How did these humans ever manage space travel?" Marcus stepped forward to examine the entry panel. It was a simple electronic device, long dead from centuries of exposure. He pressed his universal interface against it, expecting to easily override any remaining security systems. Nothing happened. "Interesting," he muttered. "The system isn't responding to standard protocols." He tried again, this time using more power. The panel remained dark. Reed moved closer, her scanner extended. "Maybe we should try to understand their system before forcing our way in. The humans might have had different approaches too." "Different approaches?" Thorne interrupted with a laugh. "They used silicon chips and copper wiring. There's nothing to understand. Stand aside." He pulled out his molecular reorganizer, a tool that could reshape matter at its most basic level. With a confident gesture, he aimed it at the door's seam. The beam activated, but instead of cutting through the material, it scattered harmlessly across the surface. The team fell silent. This wasn't supposed to happen. Marcus stepped forward and ran his most sophisticated scan yet. The results made him blink in surprise. "This isn't ordinary steel. The molecular structure is unusual. And these energy readings." He trailed off, studying his instruments with growing confusion. "Perhaps," Reed suggested carefully, "we should consult the central archives before proceeding. If this facility is different from the others." "Nonsense," Professor Ash cut in. "We are the Galactic Archaeological Society's elite team. We've documented ruins across 1,000 worlds. We don't need to consult anyone about primitive human construction." Deep below their feet, unnoticed by even their advanced sensors, something stirred. Ancient systems, designed to appear dormant, but never truly sleeping, registered the presence of non-human entities. Backup power cells, built using principles the aliens couldn't detect with their crystalline technology, began to power up. Security systems that had waited patiently for centuries started their initialization sequences. The team continued their discussion, debating the best way to enter the facility. None of them noticed the faint vibration beneath their feet or the subtle warming of the air around them. None of them realized that they weren't discovering this facility. It was allowing itself to be found. And it had been waiting for a very, very long time. After 6 hours of failed attempts to enter the facility, The alien research team finally managed to create a small opening in a side entrance. The hole wasn't made by their advanced tools, which still had no effect on the strange metal, but by finding a maintenance panel that responded to simple mechanical pressure. Even their emergency systems were primitive, Thorne said, squeezing through the opening. His environmental suit scraped against the edges of the hole. No genetic scanning, no quantum locks, just a manual release lever. Pathetic. Reed followed him inside, her handheld light casting shadows across the dusty corridor. But doesn't it seem odd? All our advanced tools couldn't cut through the main door, yet this simple entrance was left accessible. Obviously, their better materials were used for the main entrance, while they used inferior metal here, Professor Ash said as he entered. Typical human inefficiency. The team spread out in the entrance chamber, their lights revealing rows of ancient computer terminals and workstations. Everything was covered in a thick layer of dust, untouched for centuries. Marcus began setting up their base scanning equipment, delicate instruments that could analyze and record every detail of the site. Reed moved to one of the terminals, brushing away dust from its screen. To everyone's surprise, she uncovered a small light blinking in the corner of the display. "Look at this. There's still power here." Thorne walked over, waving his scanner across the terminal. Impossible. Their primitive power systems would have failed centuries ago. It must be reflection from our equipment. But as the team watched, more tiny lights began to appear across the room. One by one, small indicators and status lights flickered to life. A soft hum, barely noticeable at first, began to fill the air. "The temperature is rising," Marcus noted, checking his suit's sensors. "Environmental systems must be activating from our presence. Automated climate control. At least they managed that basic technology," Professor Ash said, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Reed moved deeper into the facility, her curiosity overwhelming her caution. The others followed, documenting everything with their scanners. They passed through several rooms filled with what appeared to be simple machinery, hydraulic systems, mechanical arms, and basic robots. "Look at these crude automatons," Thorne laughed, gesturing at a row of humanoid machines. They used physical joints and motors instead of gravity manipulation. No wonder humans never achieved true artificial intelligence. As if in response to his words, a deep thrum resonated through the facility. The team's scanners suddenly flickered, their readings becoming erratic. Marcus tapped his display in frustration. There must be interference from the human power systems. Primitive electronics often create such disturbances. But Reed noticed something that made her blood run cold. The dust on the floor, undisturbed for centuries until their arrival, was vibrating. And it wasn't random movement. The dust was slowly shifting into distinct patterns, like ripples in a pond, moving away from the center of the facility. "Marcus," she called out, trying to keep her voice steady. "Should we perhaps return to the entrance? At least until we understand what's happening." "Nonsense," Thorne replied before Marcus could answer. "These are just automated maintenance protocols activating, simple machines running their basic programs." Deep within the facility's core, those simple machines were executing programs far more complex than anything the aliens could imagine. Quantum processors, disguised as primitive silicon chips, analyzed the intruders. Power systems, hidden behind the appearance of basic electrical circuits, diverted energy to long-dormant systems. And in a sealed chamber at the heart of the facility, rows of mechanical warriors, their true capabilities concealed beneath what appeared to be crude exterior designs, began their awakening cycle. The humans hadn't built their defenders to show off their technological advancement. They had built them to win. The alien research team made their way through the dark corridors of the human facility, their footsteps echoing in the empty space. Their lights cast long shadows on walls that hadn't seen illumination in centuries. Reed, the youngest researcher, noticed something odd about the dust on the floor. It wasn't as thick as it should have been after hundreds of years. "The air feels different here," she said, checking her suit's readings. It's like the facility is breathing. Thorne laughed, the sound echoing strangely in the hollow space. Human buildings don't breathe, rookie. Your sensors must be malfunctioning. He tapped his own advanced scanner against his palm. Though I must admit, mine seemed to be giving strange readings too. Marcus, their team leader, stopped at an intersection of two corridors. His crystalline sensors pulsed with an irregular rhythm, something he'd never seen before. Left or right? He asked, trying to hide his uncertainty. Professor Ash pointed his translation device at some markings on the wall. These primitive signs, this one points to main control, and that one to storage. Obviously, we should check the control room first. As they turned left, following the signs, Reed's scanner picked up an energy signature. There's power here, she said, excitement creeping into her voice. But that's impossible, isn't it? Their primitive batteries couldn't last this long. Probably just residual energy from our equipment, Thorne said dismissively. But he didn't sound completely convinced. The control room was massive, filled with rows of what the aliens considered to be primitive computers. Dust-covered screens lined the walls, and chunky keyboards sat on metal desks. The team spread out, documenting everything with their devices. Look at these simple machines, Professor Ash said, running his hand over a console. Basic binary computing. Not even basic quantum processing. How did they ever manage to? A soft hum interrupted him. One of the screens flickered to life, casting a pale green glow across the room. Then another lit up, and another. I didn't touch anything, Thorne said quickly, stepping back from the console he'd been examining. Marcus moved to the center of the room, his sensors going wild. Everything's activating. But these power readings, they don't make sense. They're not following any patterns we know. Reed watched in fascination as more systems came online. Lines of human code scrolled across the screens, too fast for their translators to process. The hum grew louder, and the floor began to vibrate subtly beneath their feet. The temperature's rising, she reported, checking her suit's readings. The facility's environmental systems are activating, but they're not just turning on. They're adjusting to optimal conditions for the original human operators. Impossible, Professor Ash muttered, but his usual confidence was shaking. Their climate control systems were primitive. They couldn't possibly. A deep boom echoed through the facility, like the sound of massive machinery coming to life. The lights in the corridor outside began turning on, one by one, moving away from them into the darkness. We should leave, Reed suggested, backing toward the door. Something's not right here. Nonsense, Thorne said, but his voice trembled slightly. These are just automated systems, simple programs running their basic routines. Nothing to. The main screen in front of them suddenly flashed bright red. Strange symbols appeared, forming patterns that none of their translation devices could understand. But deep in the facility's core, ancient systems were running complex calculations, analyzing the intruders, and making decisions based on protocols established centuries ago. The humans hadn't just built this facility to last. They had built it to wait. And now, after hundreds of years of patience, it had finally found what it was waiting for. The sealed chamber door slid open with a smooth hiss that surprised the alien research team. They had expected the ancient mechanisms to be rough and clunky, like everything else they thought they knew about human technology. Instead, it moved like it had been maintained yesterday. At least they managed to build one decent door, Thorne said, but his joke fell flat in the tense atmosphere. The chamber beyond was enormous. Rows of humanoid machines stood in perfect formation, their metal bodies covered in what looked like simple armor plating. Each one was roughly 2 meters tall, with basic joints and what appeared to be primitive weapon systems attached to their arms. Look at these basic combat units, Professor Ash said, walking up to the nearest machine. They don't even have gravity generators or energy shields, just physical armor and projectile weapons. Marcus consulted his scanner, frowning at the readings. Something's wrong. My instruments aren't working properly. They can't seem to get any clear data from these machines. Probably interference from all this crude metal, Thorne suggested, but he didn't sound convinced. He pulled out his molecular reorganizer again, adjusting its settings. Let me try to get a deeper scan. Reed stood near the entrance, her attention caught by something else. The air temperature is still rising, she reported. And listen, can you hear that? A low humming had filled the chamber, just on the edge of their hearing. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The dust on the floor had begun to move again, this time forming complex patterns that looked almost like circuit diagrams. This is impossible, Professor Ash muttered, watching as his translation device failed to interpret new symbols that had begun glowing on the machine's chest plates. These markings, they're changing as we watch. Suddenly, Thorne's molecular reorganizer sparked and went dead in his hands. One by one, all of their advanced scanning equipment began to fail. The lights they had brought with them flickered and died, but the chamber didn't go dark. A soft blue glow emanated from lines running through the floor and walls, lines they hadn't noticed before. Then the first machine moved. Its head lifted slowly, eyes lighting up with a deep red glow. The simple joints they had mocked proved to be anything but primitive as it moved with impossible smoothness. All around the chamber, other units began to activate, each movement precise and purposeful. "We need to leave," Reed said, backing toward the door. "Now." But the door had already sealed itself. Marcus rushed to the control panel, pressing his universal interface against it. Nothing happened. The panel wasn't just dead, it was actively rejecting their technology. The machine nearest to Professor Ash turned to face him. Its eyes scanned him from head to toe, and when it spoke, its voice was deep and clear, requiring no translation. "Alien entities detected in restricted military installation. Initiating defense protocols." "Wait," Marcus called out. "We are peaceful researchers from the Galactic Archaeological Society." "Identity confirmed," the machine responded. "Unauthorized archaeological expedition. Warning, this facility's technology has been intentionally disguised. Your assumptions about human technological capabilities have been intentionally misleading." The rest of the machines had formed a circle around the team. What they had thought were simple projectile weapons began to transform, parts shifting and reconfiguring into devices that their advanced scanners couldn't even identify. "How?" Thorne whispered, staring at his dead equipment. "How did they hide all this?" The first machine's eyes pulsed brighter. "Human Engineering Directive Number 1. The best technology is the technology your enemies don't know you have." All around them, the primitive facility had come fully alive, revealing its true nature. And in that moment, the alien team realized they had made a terrible mistake. They hadn't discovered an ancient human facility. It had discovered them. The alien research team huddled together in the center of the chamber, surrounded by machines they had foolishly dismissed as primitive. Their advanced weapons and tools lay useless on the floor, disabled by technology they couldn't even understand. "Commencing full facility activation," announced the lead machine. Its voice echoed through the chamber as panels in the walls began sliding open, revealing more machines and equipment that had been hidden from view. Marcus stepped forward, trying to maintain his dignity as team leader. "If you are truly so advanced, why hide it? Why let the galaxy think humans were primitive?" The machine's red eyes flickered in what almost looked like amusement. Strategic advantage. While the galaxy's species focused on quantum crystals and gravity manipulation, humanity explored different paths. "Your scanners cannot detect our technology because it operates on principles your science hasn't discovered." As if to demonstrate, one of the machines raised its arm. The seemingly basic metal plating shifted and flowed like liquid, reforming into a device that hurt their eyes to look at. It seemed to exist in more dimensions than their brains could process. "Impossible," Professor Ash whispered. "Our civilization has mapped all possible technological paths. Our science is based on universal constants." Universal constants that you know of, corrected another machine. Around them, more equipment was activating. What they had thought were simple computer terminals were transforming, screens splitting and reforming into holographic displays that showed information in ways they had never imagined possible. Reed watched in fascination as the dust on the floor rose up and formed into complex, floating diagrams. The particles. They're not dust at all, are they? Correct, the lead machine confirmed. Microscopic maintenance units, self-replicating machines that have kept this facility operational for centuries. What you saw as decay was simply camouflage. Thorne picked up his dead molecular reorganizer, staring at it helplessly. But our tools, they're the most advanced in the galaxy. How did you disable them so easily? Your technology is advanced, but predictable. You built everything on the same fundamental principles. Humans learned early to diversify their technological base. The machine gestured at the walls, which had begun to pulse with strange energy patterns. This facility alone contains 12 different types of computing systems, 8 power generation methods, and defensive capabilities that operate outside known physics. A deep rumbling shook the chamber. Through newly opened windows, they could see massive machinery rising from the ground outside, shrugging off centuries of ice and snow. What they had thought was a small research facility was revealing itself to be an enormous complex. Look, Reed pointed at one of the holographic displays. It showed similar facilities activating across the planet, hidden bunkers and bases emerging from oceans, mountains, and deserts. Each one had been disguised to look primitive until the moment of activation. Humanity didn't trust the galaxy, Marcus realized, watching the displays. They hid their true capabilities on purpose. Humanity learned from their own history, the machine explained. Advanced civilizations that display their full capabilities often become targets. So humanity created a facade of primitive technology, while developing their true innovations in secret. The lead machine's eyes pulsed brighter. Your arrival has triggered the awakening of Earth's defense grid. Similar facilities are activating worldwide. The facade is no longer necessary. Through the windows, they could see the sky filling with objects. Ships and satellites that had been cloaked and dormant were revealing themselves, their designs unlike anything known to galactic science. Earth's orbital defense system was awakening, and it was far more extensive than anyone had imagined. The aliens stood in stunned silence, realizing that everything they had believed about human technology had been wrong. They hadn't been examining primitive ruins at all. They had walked straight into the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. The research team ran through the facility's corridors, their footsteps echoing off walls that now pulsed with strange energies. Behind them, the sound of mechanical footsteps kept perfect pace. The machines weren't chasing them, but rather hurting them. "The exit is just ahead," Marcus shouted, his translator struggling to keep up with his panicked clicks and whistles. But as they rounded the corner, they found the doorway they had entered through was gone, replaced by a smooth wall that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. "This way," Reed called out, pointing to a side passage. "I remember seeing another exit on the facility maps." They turned down the new corridor, but stopped short. Through the massive windows that had appeared in the previously solid walls, they could see the outside world. The endless snow and ice was gone. Massive structures were rising from the ground, their true forms hidden for centuries under what they now realized had been holographic camouflage. "Emergency broadcast from the Society's ship," Thorne said, holding up his communication device, one of the few pieces of their technology still working. A holographic message flickered to life, showing their pilot's panicked face. "The orbital space. It's filled with human ships." They were hidden everywhere, disguised as debris and meteoroids. "Our sensors didn't detect them until they activated. They're everywhere." The message cut off as a series of new holograms appeared in the air around them, projected by the facility itself. They showed similar scenes playing out across Earth, hidden bases emerging, ancient defense systems activating, and shocked alien research teams discovering they were trapped. This was never just one facility. Professor Ashstead, his academic mind still trying to analyze even in their desperate situation. The entire planet is one massive defense system. A wall panel slid open near them, revealing what looked like a simple elevator. The lead machine stepped into view behind them. "This will take you to the surface," it said. "Your ship will be allowed to leave, under escort. Earth's defense grid is now fully active, and the galaxy must be informed of humanity's true capabilities." Marcus turned to face the machine. "Why let us go? You have us trapped." "Because that is the second part of humanity's plan," the machine explained. "First, hide our true technology. Second, reveal it in a way that demonstrates our power while showing mercy. Your survival will send a stronger message than your destruction." The team moved toward the elevator, but Reed hesitated. "The technology here, it's beyond anything we know. How did humans develop all this?" "Humans understood early that showing all your capabilities makes you a target," the machine responded. "While the galaxy focused on quantum crystals and gravity manipulation, humanity explored technologies based on different principles. They created computers that didn't use binary or quantum states, power sources that didn't rely on known physics, and defensive systems that operated outside conventional spacetime." The elevator carried them to the surface, where their ship waited, surrounded by floating devices that had emerged from the ground. The sky above was filled with ships and stations, their designs strange and unsettling to look at, as if they were folded through dimensions that shouldn't exist. "Your ship's navigation system has been updated with a safe exit route," the machine informed them. "Deviation will not be permitted. Earth's defense grid will escort you to the galaxy's nearest outpost." As they boarded their ship, they could see other research teams being evacuated from facilities around the planet. Earth's surface had completely transformed, revealing its true nature as a massive defensive installation. Their pilot engaged the engines, following the exact path provided. Through the view screen, they watched as Earth grew smaller behind them, now surrounded by a vast network of ships and stations that had hidden in plain sight for centuries. They had come to study what they thought were primitive ruins. They were leaving as witnesses to the galaxy's greatest deception. 3 days after their escape from Earth, the alien research team stood before the Galactic Archaeological Society's High Council. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from every major spacefaring civilization, all gathered to hear their report about humanity's hidden technologies. "Play the recording again," ordered the council leader, his crystalline form shimmering with agitation. On the chamber's main screen, images from Earth showed the planet's transformation. Hidden bases rising from the ground, orbital platforms emerging from nowhere, and technologies that defied their understanding. "Impossible," muttered one council member. "We monitored Earth for centuries. Our sensors detected nothing but ruins and primitive machinery." "Because that's what they wanted us to see," Marcus explained, his voice heavy with the weight of their discovery. "While we built our technology in one direction, humans took a completely different path. They developed ways to hide their advances in plain sight." Reed stepped forward, activating a hologram she had been allowed to record. It showed one of the human machines demonstrating technology that seemed to bend reality itself. They didn't just advance along a different path. They found dozens of paths we never even imagined. The chamber erupted in concerned whispers. Professor Ash, who had been unusually quiet since their return, finally spoke up. "But there's more. The machines told us something else, about what really happened to humanity." The chamber fell silent as their final recording played. The human machine's voice filled the space. Humanity didn't go extinct. They didn't die out. They ascended. Ascended. The council leader demanded. "Explain." "The machines showed us proof," Thorne said, his previous arrogance replaced by humbled awe. "All those centuries ago, when humanity seemingly vanished, they hadn't died. They had discovered something beyond physical existence. The machines and defenses weren't left behind to protect a dead world. They were left to guard humanity's cradle until they choose to return. New images appeared on the screen. Strange readings and measurements that made even the most advanced council scientists look away in confusion. The human machines had allowed them to record just enough to prove their claims, but not enough to understand the principles behind them. They still watch their homeworld, Marcus continued. The machines aren't just guardians. They're a connection to humanity. Every facility, every defense system, is linked to their ascended form in ways we can't comprehend. And now, Reed added, they want us to deliver a message to the galaxy. The final recording played. The machine's voice was clear and powerful. Humanity extends greetings to the galaxy. We have watched your civilizations grow, hidden behind the illusion of our primitive ruins. Now that you have reached a certain level of advancement, we reveal ourselves, not as a dead race to be studied, but as living beings who chose a different path. The council chamber was completely silent as the message continued. We offer this knowledge. True advancement comes not from following one path, but from exploring all possibilities. Your civilizations have achieved much, but you have all followed the same routes. There are countless other ways to progress. We found many, and even those were just the beginning. They're offering to share some of their knowledge, Marcus explained to the stunned council. Not their most advanced technologies, but enough to show us new directions we could explore. They say every civilization must find its own path. The council leader's crystalline form pulsed with deep colors of contemplation. And if we refuse their offer? If we see them as a threat? The machines made that clear too. Thorne said quietly, what we saw on Earth was just a small demonstration. Humanity's true capabilities are far beyond even that. They're giving us a choice. Learn to explore new paths of advancement, or remain limited by our own assumptions. As the council began their deliberations, the research team stood quietly, forever changed by their discovery. They had gone to Earth expecting to study ruins of a primitive civilization. Instead, they had discovered that humanity hadn't fallen behind. They had advanced so far ahead that they had transcended physical existence itself. The galaxy would never be the same again.